Hello there, and welcome to the mechanic explanation section of this video. Here, I'll show you a mechanic from the game in action, and then I'll explain how it works. We'll start off first with the XR Rig and XR Interaction Manager. The XR Rig and the XR Interaction Manager are components in the game that allows you to interact with the environment through a VR headset. It comes pre-built with XR ray interactors, which are lasers that allow the player to interact with interactable objects in the environment. More on that later. Once you add the pre-built continuous move provider, continuous turn provider, character controller, and character control driver, you can move around the scene and collide with walls and other collision objects. Lastly, you must add some hand models to the left and right hand controller elements to get your hands in the game. The second mechanic we'll talk about is the teleport mechanic. This code allows you to teleport from place to place upon interaction with an applicable object. Let's first take a look at the code. First, we need to define two things in our scene: the transform of where we want the player to be moved to, and the game object we want to move. In this case, it's the XR rig that stands in for the player. We then make a public function, so it can be found later in the Unity menu, and then we find the position of an object we want to move and make it equal to the transform we specified. Now we have to add an XR simple interactable script and two colliders to the object we want to teleport the player with. One collider is a trigger and the other is a standard collider. Once we add this pre-made script, it'll give us a number of options regarding interactability. We want the on selection option because that means it'll teleport the player when they press the trigger on their controller. We then add the script to the object first, and in the script we define the object we want the player to teleport to, and then the XR rig is the object we will teleport because that's our player. We then drag it up into the on selection box area, find the function that we created before, and then upon clicking the interactable object, the player will be teleported to another location. The third mechanic we're going to talk about lets us load new scenes. In this script, we need to use the Unity scene management as a result. We first make a string that defines the name of the scene we want to load later. We then make a function, and inside there we say, "Hey scene manager, load the scene specified by the string we'll type in later in the Unity menu." We then put this string on the object we want the player to click, define the name of the scene in the string section, and then drag it up into the XR interactable on selection section. And then we can teleport the player into a new scene. The fourth mechanic that you don't see in the demo is pickupable objects. To make an object pickupable, simply add a pre-made grab interactable script, and there you go. You can pick it up. We'll next talk about the animation trigger mechanic. This is done by creating two animations on the character, one that's an idle and one that's the animation we actually want to play. We play the idle first, and then put a condition trigger string in between the two animations. Once the trigger string has been mentioned in the script I'm about to show, the second animation will play. So inside this script, we create a public animator and a public string. The animator is to find the current character we want to animate, and the public string lets us type in the name of the trigger we set within the Unity menu. We then make a public function inside we write this code. This says basically set off the trigger that we set. Once in the Unity menu, we define the animator, the object that needs to be animated, and then we type in the name of the trigger we set. Slap that in, and there you go. You got a interactable object that you interact with, and then the animation will play. The fifth mechanic is the auto scene loader. This is a combination of the animation trigger mechanic and the new script that we have here. This script basically says, once an object enters inside the object's trigger, change the scene to what we type in for the scene. The animation box approaches the trigger box and it loads a new scene upon contact. This allows me to make a timed scene loading system using physical objects within the engine. The last mechanic we are going to talk about is the TEXTBOX UI mechanic. While I understand a bit of how the code operates, I still don't believe I can do it justice with an explanation. So instead, we'll take a look at an issue that I had while making this keyboard segment. As seen in the demo, the player exits the world of VR to come and leave a message for the next player. Unfortunately, this created a small problem as the game used the new VR input manager instead of the default one. I ended up learning that you must go into the game's properties, find the new input package, and then add your inputs manually. Then I had the issue where the VR camera would still be loaded in a TEXTBOX scene. So I found the normal camera, turned off the VR rendering, and it almost worked. It created one more issue. It frees rendering the headset, but there would be frames that would flicker back and forth. It'd make you very nauseous. So what I did was created a blank white room where nobody could see anything else, and you wouldn't be able to notice that the frames were actually repeating or not. So it was much less sickening to the player. Thanks again for taking a look at my video game demo and what it's taken to make it so far. Hopefully you enjoyed it enough that you'll be sticking around to see it when it's fully done.